Claude Opus 4.6 is here, and it is a big step forward in improvement over Opus 4.5. And I actually got early access to it. I've been playing around with it, and yes, it is that good. Let me tell you everything about it. According to the blog post, it plans more carefully, sustains agentic tasks for longer, can operate more reliably in larger code bases, and has better code review and debugging skills to catch its own mistakes. This is the key line. Sustains agentic tasks for longer. That is the direction that all of these coding models are going. Being more agentic, being able to run for longer time horizons, being able to delegate out to sub-agents. This is all where the industry is headed. This is what we're seeing in Claude Code, Codex, Cursor, even Claudebot. And by the way, yes, I am extremely excited to plug this into Claudebot, but I haven't been able to do it yet. And let me just show you the rate of progress. This is also known as a completely vertical line. This is log scale, and what we're seeing is the amount of time the model can run autonomously successfully. Specifically, this is the time horizon of software engineering tasks different LLMs can complete at 50% of the time. And look at this, GPT 5.2 high, above 6.5 hours, running autonomously and successfully completing a task. That is what I'm talking about. Right now, it is the time of agentic autonomy. Now, this graph was put out a couple days ago, and as of today, we have two new models, as I said, Opus 4.6, and as I'm recording this video, GPT 5.3 just dropped. I'll make a separate video about that coming soon. But I wonder what those models are gonna look like on this chart. You wanna know what else is really special about Opus 4.6? Right here, a 1 million token context window. It's currently in beta, but it's the only other model company to offer that outside of Google's Gemini. This is a major milestone for the Anthropic team. The average context window for the Claude family of models and even OpenAI's family of models have been around 200K. And now we have a 1 million token context window. And this helps with everything, but especially with large code bases. But it's not just about having a large context window. You also have to be able to maintain the quality across those 1 million tokens. Sometimes and oftentimes what happens is something called context rot. The more context you put in there, the worse the model is at figuring out what it needs from that context window. And I'm going to show you the benchmark against Opus 4.5 in a minute. It also has improved itself on running financial analysis, doing research, using and creating documents, spreadsheets, and presentations. And this is all in reference to both Claude Code and Claude Cowork. And if you haven't used Claude Cowork, I highly recommend it. And just yesterday, we had something called the SaaS apocalypse, basically $300 billion wiped out of the market capitalization of the biggest SaaS companies out there. And a lot of people are pointing to the fact that Anthropic dropped a bunch of plugins for different work tools that allow Claude to basically do work within those tools. And the reasoning is, well, if Claude is able to do more and more work and create more applications and do it all autonomously through a chat interface, the SaaS companies are going to be losing business. And now with Opus 4.6, it's even more pronounced. So again, if you haven't tried Cowork, go get it. And you could try Opus 4.6 right now. And Box put together their own evals. They got early access to 4.6 and they also saw major improvements. Shout out to Box for sponsoring this video. Let me show you what they found. So this is the Box AI complex work eval with Opus 4.6. And so in yellow, it's 4.6 versus purple in 4.5. These are hard reasoning tasks on enterprise content. So think thousands of documents and trying to reason over them and connect the dots between different documents. That is this benchmark. So on the full data set, we see a 10% bump with Opus 4.6. For report drafting from data, meaning reading the data and then drafting a report about that data, they actually saw their benchmark score double from 4.5 to 4.6. Look at this, 36 to 75%. On the due diligence part of the benchmark, it's going from 45% to 51%. Now, if we dive into the specific industries, look at this. We have public sector, 68 to 75, financial services, 66 to 71, life sciences and healthcare, a big jump, 39 to 64, and legal, 45 to 51. These are massive improvements for a single dot version bump. And Box helps you unlock real value from your documents. Contracts, research papers, product designs, financial statements, load them all into Box and let Box AI do the work for you. I highly recommend using Box. I'm gonna drop the link down below. All right, let's look at the benchmarks because I know you wanna see them. Here's GDP Val, which is interesting because this is actually OpenAI's own benchmark. So here it is for knowledge work, Opus 4.6, an ELO score of 1606, a 200-point jump from Opus 4.5. And here's GPT 5.2 at 1462. That's 150 points less than Opus 4.6. Gemini 3 Pro is right there at 1195, way below the others. Here's the Browse Comp benchmark. This is agentic search. Opus 4.6 scoring an 84. That is a 20-point jump from Opus 4.5. We have GPT 5.2 Pro right over here. And again, I'm comparing it against 5.2 because that's what's available in this chart. And I haven't had a chance to go check out 5.3 yet. Here's Terminal Bench, and we're seeing a 65.4% for Opus 4.6. That is a 6-point jump from Opus 4.5. But surprisingly, GPT 5.2 Codex is actually right around the same score. And we have Humanity's Last Exam. So what we're seeing here is with tools in dark and without tools with the lighter shade, 53 versus 40. And that is 53 versus 43 as compared to Opus 4.5. And yes, Opus 4.6 across the board, the best model on the planet. And that's not all. We now have a new feature called Agent Teams. It's a little bit like Agent Swarms. A lot of these companies are calling them different names, but it's essentially the same thing. One model that's able to delegate out to multiple sub-agents and let them do work and kind of orchestrate that work over time. Let's go into the documentation about Agent Teams because it is super interesting. Agent Teams lets you coordinate multiple Claude Code instances working together. One session acts as the team lead, coordinating work, assigning tasks, and synthesizing results. Teammates work independently, each in its own context window, and communicate directly with each other. All I hear when I'm reading this is tokens, tokens, tokens. Opus is already very expensive. Things like Claude Code already use a ton of tokens, and now you're basically gonna spin up multiple Claude Code instances running in parallel, and all I'm hearing is GPU go burr. But it's interesting, they actually say it's not like sub-agents, but let me explain. Unlike sub-agents, which run within a single session and can only report back to the main agent, you can also interact with individual teammates directly without going through the lead. So when should you use Agent Teams? Agent Teams are most effective for tasks where parallel exploration adds real value. So research and review, new modules or features, debugging with competing hypotheses, and cross-layer coordination. So for example, on the research and review, you can have your main coordination agent go and do research on kind of different paths and then come back once they've done that research and compare notes. And here's the key. Agent Teams add coordination overhead, fine, and use significantly more tokens than a single session. So here are the main differences. Here's how to think about sub-agents versus Agent Teams. For the context, sub-agents each have their own context window, but they all report back and kind of roll into the main agent versus Agent Teams. They are all fully independent and you can interact with them directly, each of those teammates. For communication, like I said, with the Agent Teams, the teammates can message each other directly versus a single agent spawning a bunch of sub-agents. Those sub-agents are only able to report back into that main original agent. Similar with coordination, the main agent manages all the work versus the shared task list with self-coordination on the agent team. And for the token cost, the sub-agent is far less. Claude is also giving you a lot more fine-grained control over what's happening during the actual inference process. So one, you can use the API to do compaction. So that is taking a large context and kind of shrinking it down, compressing it. And obviously when you have compaction, you lose some fidelity and sometimes you lose important aspects, but the increased context window will help you keep more of the context for longer. They're also introducing something called adaptive thinking. The model, as it's going, can actually adjust its thinking amount up and down. So more thinking, less thinking, dependent on the context of the task while it's actually executing the task. It's really cool. And you also have new effort controls. So you get more fine-grained control over intelligence, speed, and cost. But the next line is really why Microsoft might be a little scared right now and why the SaaSpocalypse has happened. We've made substantial upgrades to Claude in Excel, and we're releasing Claude in PowerPoint in Research Preview. It is because these agents are doing incredible work in the tools that people use every single day, but not Anthropic's own tools. They're doing it in their competitors' tools and Microsoft's tools. So interesting to see this play out. And here's the pricing. 4.6 is the same price as 4.5. Yes, it is still expensive. So for prompts less than 200,000 tokens, it's $5 per million input tokens. And for above 200,000, it is $10. For output, $25 per million if the prompt is under 200,000 tokens, and for above, it is $37.50. Then, of course, you get significant discounts by using prompt caching. So a little bit about the vibes of the model according to Anthropic. Listen to this. Opus 4.6 often thinks more deeply and more carefully, revisits its reasoning before settling on an answer. This produces better results on harder problems, but can add cost and latency on simpler ones. And of course, you can always adjust it with /effort. Okay, so let's talk about the million tokens, because that seems like potentially the biggest unlock so far. I said earlier that it's not just about having a million tokens. You actually have to be able to have high quality within those million tokens. The model actually has to be able to read all million tokens and understand and be able to make connections between all of those tokens. And that apparently is where Opus shines. Listen to this. Opus 4.6 is much better at retrieving relevant information from large sets of documents. This extends to long context tasks where it holds and tracks information over hundreds of thousands of tokens with less drift and picks up buried details that even 4.5 would miss. So here they say a lot of people complain about context rot, and that is where Opus 4.6 performs markedly better. So let's actually see what that looks like. This is MRCRV2, 8 needle in a haystack. Basically, they take a little piece of information, drop it in a massive context window, and then try to retrieve that information. And here it is 8 different pieces of information over a single context. So what we're seeing, long context retrieval. For Opus 4.6, 256K tokens, we have a 93% accuracy. Then if we bump it up to 1 million tokens, we have a 76% accuracy. Definitely a drop, but that's to be expected when you are 4xing the size of the context. And here it is versus Sonnet 4.5. So obviously a massive improvement. And long context reasoning has also been improved. Again, not just about retrieval, but actually being able to do things with that context. So we can see Opus 4.6, 72 versus a 50 for Sonnet 4.5, and 38 on BFS 1 million versus 25.6 for Sonnet 4.5. All right, a couple more quick benchmarks. This is root cause analysis. And as we can see, we see a nice bump from Opus 4.5 to Opus 4.6. Multilingual coding, it is about the same, a tiny bump. Long-term coherence. Now, this is an interesting one. This is vending bench. This is the one where models are tasked with managing an actual vending machine and seeing if they can make money. And as we can see here, Opus 4.5 made $5,000. Opus 4.6, $8,000. A massive improvement. And that is compared to, here's Gemini 3 Pro at $5,000 and GPT 5.2 at $3,500. We have improvements in cybersecurity and in life sciences. And of course, it's not Anthropic unless they're talking about alignment and safety. So here, overall misaligned behavior, we can actually compare it to Opus 4.1, which was sitting at about a 4.3, Opus 4.5, which is sitting at about a 1.8, and now a slight improvement, probably about a 1.7 for Opus 4.6. So a phenomenal update. I'm going to be testing it like crazy. I'm going to plug it into ClaudeBot. I will let you know how it does. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.